Well, hello and welcome to the Below the Rim show, where we try to bring you as many different facts, figures, rumours as we can, British basketball-wise, and maybe we'll expand that one day. Hey, Josh? We'll see where we go. But we've got a special guest coming up today. I'll introduce the fellas as always. Ads, my man, how you doing?
Good morning.
Coffee, good lad. Josh, how's it going?
Nescafe, go on, son.
And a special guest, the Teesside Lions Director, Mr. James Thomson. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Water.
Right. Well, as I said, special guest. Teesside Lions have been in the kind of forefront of late in social media terms. There's been rumours and all sorts of things flying around. We'll kick things off with the first kind of thing that broke a couple of weeks ago now, I think it was. But it's the hiring of Marc Steutel as now Teesside Lions head coach, which is obviously a no-brainer. A coach of that stature, the good things he's done with GB, heading things up in the absence of Nate Rankin, and now obviously he's going to be your coach. How does that kind of thing come about? How does that process start? How do you get a coach of that stature?
Well, I suppose that the first instance was the decision as to whether we bring in somebody else. Because effectively, I was sacking myself to replace myself with Marc or somebody else. And in the first instance, it was an easy decision, because when you have the opportunity to bring in someone like Marc, or at least chase that opportunity, like you say, it was an easy decision to make. Somebody of Marc's stature, his ability, and his respect, not only in this country but across Europe, as one of the brightest young coaches in the game, to have, we're quite ambitious as a club, and the other person that is involved with me is a guy called Martin Anson. Martin Anson is an owner and director of a company called Lemon Business Solutions. So he's very business orientated, and we had discussions, and we were saying that we need to find the right people to put in place in the right jobs. You want the best people doing the right jobs, and as much as I enjoy coaching, the problem we were finding is that I was doing too much, so I was spreading myself very thinly. About a year ago, a little bit more than a year ago, we launched plans for bringing professional basketball to Teesside, and the last season we launched the National League Division 3 side, and we were generating a good off-court event. We had I think we were fairly confident at the start of the season, definitely in pre-season, that we were going to have a very good team and challenging for the league title, and things just didn't pan out the way we would have wanted, especially on paper. The players that we had, we just didn't really turn out a consistent squad. Be it injury, be it work, all of the issues you have in the lower leagues of National League basketball. So we fell away from the targets there. I think, Adam, your team is the Spinners.
Yeah.
And, there was our first game was against you guys. And I remember going there, and we were missing probably 3 or 4 what you would consider starting players. And you guys just blew us away. And we still had a decent squad. I mean, we should have done a lot better. I think after the first quarter, it was really damage limitation. And we perked ourselves up a little bit and did a lot better in the second half. But the game was done. So another aspect of that is having someone like Marc involved and being dedicated in that role, not just in terms of the coaching, but also recruitment, because as somebody of his stature would obviously attract high caliber players. I think that it was a no-brainer really in terms of our desire to bring him in, and then we just had to really persuade him to come on board. So yeah, that was the story behind it. I mean, we were talking to him for a good, I'd say a good 6, 7, 8 months. There was potential of him joining in last season, and it was just never really the right time to make something happen. And we were both aware of, if we're going to do this, we wanted it to be done properly and make sure that it had the legs to continue. We didn't want it to be a short term dip in the water and it just not work out. As the season came to an end, and I felt that I wasn't disappointed with the season, and to be honest, I don't really like the particular league you're in and the competition. It doesn't really matter. What's important is the event. So we don't, the people that come to watch our game, they don't come to watch high level basketball. They don't know what high level basketball is. They're new converts to a sport and they want to be entertained. Now, if you bring people to a basketball game and you just sit them down and they're watching a game, it's like watching tennis. They just watch a ball go from side to side with no real idea about what is going on. So we spend a lot of attention time and we've invested a lot into the arena. So we have our own cafe bar, which is all branded up. We have the stands, which are sponsored. And we're trying to generate this big event atmosphere that when people come to a game, they have the music and the sound effects, they have the introductions, the lights go out, the hairs go up on the back of their necks, and they're entertained. They're enthralled by this event, and over time they become basketball fans. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on, and Marc now is a huge part of our plans to progress in the area.
Well, I'll throw things open to the floor. Ads, my man, fire away.
Yeah, hi mate. It's good to have you on. Actually, it's interesting listening to what you're saying there because I cover a bit of National League because I go up and cover spinners as much as I can, but also in D2 the Magic as well. And one thing that is consistent, and we talk about it on the regular Below the Rim show a lot, is just how competitive National League is at the moment. D3 is just unbelievably competitive, and I've seen teams that would give any probably lower half of the table BBL club a good game. Is that kind of where you've drawn inspiration to go with what you're doing at the moment?
Yeah, well, I mean, in terms of I agree that the level of competition in Division 3, it is very impressive. I think the amalgamation of Division 4 and Division North, you would have thought that would have possibly diluted. And there were some teams in there. There were some teams that did struggle last season, but on any day, and you look at some of the results, and they were pushing close some of the harder teams, and they were beating teams here and there. So on any day, you could look at teams that would pull out a surprise. The level of competition is not important to me personally. The entity is more important. The event is more important, even dare I say, than winning the game. If people come to a game, they're excited, they're enthralled by a game. If they're watching a good game of basketball, but your team gets beat, well, you just got to suck it up and then move on to the next one. I think that was the problem with Eagles, the Newcastle Eagles in the BBL, when they had their sustained level of dominance. It got a little bit boring. Fans were going to a game and just expecting to win. The excitement and that kind of thrill of the game was missing. And now that you've got the likes of London Lions that are becoming more dominant, and obviously Leicester Riders, I think is the best thing that's happened to the BBL in a long time, because now the league is just a lot more exciting. You don't know who's going to win. But our ambitions, our aims are to go to play in the highest level of British basketball. We did talk before we signed Marc. We talked. Martin sent me a message, and I think, you know, his message was something along the lines of, do we go hard or do we go home? In the sense of, do we just apply for BBL and you just make it happen now? And we talked to Marc about this as well. And because I think when you're looking at Marc's position, you know, the current interim head coach of Great Britain, coming to a Division 3 North basketball club, only their first season in National League basketball in the leagues, it was a, well, many people would look at it as a very strange decision, and almost belittling his stature in the game. But I think Marc was sold on myself, Martin, and our ambitions for the club, not just in terms of selling him some highlights, but actually showing. I mean, Marc was aware of, you know, we've known each other for a while, not as good friends, but we've been loosely connected, and we've kind of crossed paths here and there. And I think, you know, he is, you know, he was aware of what we were doing at Teesside Lions over the last few years. I mean, to give you a little bit of history, we did have a stint in National League men's, and it was 2009, 2010 to about 2013. And we did play it would have been the previous team to Lancashire Spinners, which was Rosendale Raptors. Yeah. And, you know, that was a really good battle between us. I think we were then called Middlesbrough Lions, and Rosendale Middlesbrough were the two teams fighting for the championship. And that was a great season. We had great players like Pabz Sam and Mike Konanek, and, you know, others as well. It was just a really good season. Martin wasn't around at that point. Martin came on late. I decided to stop the National League side in 2013 for one reason. It was just it was a I don't know how to say this diplomatically. We had, well, outside interference, I suppose. There was other teams in the area, rival teams that were just, I suppose, constantly undermining what we were doing and poaching players, and it just got a little bit too much, really. I felt like I was developing two teams. So we, you know, I parked the National League senior men's team and decided to concentrate on the grassroots. And it was the best decision I've ever made. At the time, my thoughts were, you know, what's the point of putting all your energy into a senior men's team that costs a lot of money, and the return just wasn't there. Now that we spent the last 7 years developing grassroots, what we have is a foundation of about 180 players that are fully committed, getting better every day. We have training 7 days a week. We now have 2 university programs under our belt. And last season, not the season that's just abruptly ended, but the season before, we entered an under-14 team into National League for the first time, and they got walloped. They got absolutely walloped every game. We won 2 games in the whole season. We knew it was going to happen. These kids had never played league basketball before. As a coach, you know, I coached them that year, and you know, it's difficult when you're coaching. It's easy to coach good players. Effectively, you structure them and let them go do their job. And when you have players that either don't know how to play or just learn the game, and especially under 14 players, I mean, at that time we had 4 year 6s. When you consider year 6s against year 9s, you know, it's like boys against men. That's a big difference. Yeah. But the point I'm trying to make is that we've tried to make the right decisions at every turn in the road, and we're not looking at the quick jump to a successful conclusion. I think what we want to do is enjoy the ride. When we talked to Marc, we talked to Martin, we talked about the BBL entry, and the big difficulty we had with that is in the current climate, we can't plan. So we don't know when the BBL would start. That is going to have an effect on recruitment. When do we bring players in? When do we start housing? When all of those factors made it impossible for us to consider a BBL application. And that was, despite the fact that we hadn't opened negotiations with the BBL itself. So that is a process in itself. That how do you do that remotely? They're going to need to come and see the venue. It's impossible. It's impossible.
Yeah.
So we made the decision to enjoy the ride. Really, we're looking to do well in Division 3. We're looking to challenge for promotion, and then again do the same thing in Division 2 and Division 1. And at some point, at the right time, we haven't really put a timeline on it, but at the earliest opportunity, we would like to participate in the BBL.
Good aspiration. Josh, my man.
First of all, James, great to have you here. And there's some really interesting things you've spoken about, the deep history of the Teesside Lions. And as we mentioned before, the part of Teesside has had a rich history of basketball with the likes of Tony Hansen, the former NBA player that played for the New Orleans Jazz. I used to play with his son very, very way back in the day. Let's go back to Marc Steutel, for example. He's now at a very elite level because he's coaching the Great Britain national team, and he's off to a good start. You could see in the Montenegro game that there was potential, even though they came up with a loss. And then they go up to Newcastle and they defeat Germany. And that was a big game for Marc. That was a big game for GB. So he's off the ground running right now. And now he's got to keep going forward. What do you see in terms of his coaching pedagogy? Because when they're at that level, every coach at that level has a very strong understanding of the game, sort of the X's and O's, the defense, the offensive breakdown, the players management. But I remember being in China, and talking with a head official of the Philippines about former basketball coach, well, not former, GB basketball coach, Tim Lewis. And they said to me that Tim Lewis's pedagogy was about playing the zone defense and sort of how to break zone defenses down. When I see Marc Steutel coaching in the timeouts, I see him like a David Blatt, if you like, a very, very good motivator. I see his communication, his interpersonal skills with players very, very strong. What do you see Marc Steutel's main coaching pedagogy for your team?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with what you just said. I think that ultimately he's a man motivator. He's an inspirational figure. His large life is 6'6". He has not an elite background in terms of playing, but he's got a credible background in playing. But more importantly, as a coach, he has a legitimate. You can have, and I know for myself, player coaching is very, very difficult. Something has to give, either a percentage of the player or a percentage of the coach. So it's a very difficult balance. But you have a lot of player coaching throughout the country. You have a lot of players that evolve into coaches, and you have a very small minority of people that maybe don't play that actually play that develop into coaching. Marc is one of those in between where he was, he was a very, very high caliber player at a young level, and he decided to go into the coaching route at quite a young age. I think he's 35 now. Yep. So he's a relatively young person, but he's managed to carve his reputation purely on coaching, not on playing. I don't mean that. This sounds like I'm being detrimental to his playing level. I'm not. I don't mean it in that sense, because he is a high level player as well. I think he obviously went to America. He was one of the East Durham College when there was that was the National Academy. He was the captain there. So he is an elite player in his own right. But I think he's one of those people that has managed to carve a credible reputation purely as a coach that you don't see too often. I'm trying to think of examples in terms of Rob Pastranato at Leicester.
Rob Paternostro, yeah.
He was a player and then became a coach. Fab Florney, player coach, a BTR Lions player coach. You know, there's examples of player coaches up and down the country. I don't know whether that is a potential finance decision. You know, is it better to have a player coach than just a coach and then your players? But in the sense of Marc, I think he's developed and established a really credible. You don't recognise Marc as a player; you recognise him as a coach.
Absolutely.
And that's not being disrespectful to his playing standard, because he was a very elite player. But I think that he's done a fantastic job. He's a motivator. He's an all-round coach. He knows how to control the game. He knows how to prep the game. He knows how to recruit. He's been out of the league game for a little while. Northumbria, as you know, they pulled the plug on their funding, which means that their National League side had to be disbanded. And I suppose that's another area that we want to kind of avoid, really, is having any sensitive funding streams in which, if they were removed, would result in the loss of Teesside Lions.
That's my man.
I mean, what I've talked to Greg quite a lot about this with spinners. Obviously, there's always the fear if you're looking to advance the future of your club and everything, is sometimes going at it too quickly, per se. What sort of timeline are you working off at the moment? I mean, what's your ultimate plan in terms of BBL as you kind of hopefully move up naturally with promotion and whatnot? What have you set any kinds of time frames or anything like that?
Other than initially getting probably ahead of ourselves and getting quite excited and thinking, let's just do it. We haven't really set a timeline, and I think there's no pressure on, if for whatever reason we don't achieve promotion this year, it's not a case of, right, that's it, we're stopping everything. I'm aware of teams in the past where, I mean, the old Richmond, I can't remember the surname, but there was the Richmond team. They came together, and I think the owner at the time had said, right, there's 100 grand, go out and win me a championship. And after that one season, they folded. Mm. And we want to make sure that we're not putting in we're trying to lay all the foundations and put the right people in place to ensure that we have sustainability. And if that means that we have to crawl before we can walk, then we're prepared to do that. So we're not reliant on BBL basketball to survive or to flourish. We're flourishing quite well in Division 3 North. And back to my point of the standard or the league that we're playing in doesn't really matter, because the people that are coming to watch us are entertained by the players on the court, not the level of competition that they are watching. And in many respects, they wouldn't know the difference between Division 3 basketball and NBA basketball. They're coming for the entertainment. So in terms of one of our main revenue streams being paying customers and secondary income through discretionary spend at events, it doesn't matter whether we're in the BBL or not. But in terms of playing amongst the big boys and trying to put Teesside Lions on the map in UK basketball, then you have to play at the highest level. So we don't have I mean, if we manage, who knows when the season is going to start? I mean,
that's true. Yeah,
that's the. I could probably give you a more definitive answer if we knew what the season would look like when it does start. If we knew when it will start, that we might be able to say, right, between 2 and 3 years, we want to be applying for BBL entry, because obviously it's not a promotion system. It's an application system, and if you have all the ingredients in place in terms of your finance and facility, team to compete, then you would be judged on that merit. I think we have a lot of those ingredients in place already. I think we've also proven in quite a short time of our capabilities, not just in terms of off the court, arena and branding. We have quite a strong brand. We have quite a big pull as well. I think the other day we sent 3 orders, to national. One to Southampton, one to, around the country. So we generate quite a lot of sales nationally and internationally, just from people that have seen the uniforms and thought, "Oh, I like your uniform. It looks really nice. Where do you play? What's the team? What's the sport?" So I think there's lots of, in terms of creating a successful club, I think there's lots of ingredients. It's not just about having a successful team. Off the court, you need to have all the pieces in place. And that's what we've literally done over the last 6-7 years, is take a step back away from National League men's basketball and make sure that we have the foundation in place to push us forward. I mean, a core of our audience, of our spectators, is young players and friends and family that come through the club, that come to watch the games.
How does the deal work with your particular? Is it the Eston Sports Academy? Yeah,
I think it's Eston Leisure Centre now.
Okay, it says on the stat-wise you've got a capacity of over 1,000, nearly 1,200. Is that generally packed week in, week out?
Well, no, not every week. I mean, it's a building process for us. So I would say that we probably averaged around about 200 or 300 at each game, and then we had maybe about 3 games where we pushed the 500. So I would say that one side was full, and what we tended to do was to kind of direct people onto one side of the court, because we have we have 4 stands, but there's 3 stands on one side of the court, and then there's the main stand, which we call the Teesside Hospice family stand. And just for photography, really, it's important to try and make the crowd look as busy as possible.
Yeah.
It looks much better on a photo. Anytime a photographer comes in and takes a photo from the other side and it's just got blank seating, or the cameraman, I delete the photo. It's got, you're trying to sell a story, and the story is entertainment, excitement. I mean, we had one photo where there was a young fan, and he was just screaming in support of the team, and it was the embodiment and the projection of that photo was absolutely, it was a powerful photo. Now, if the photographer was on that side taking the empty stands, you miss everything, and the story is not told. So I mean, Lancashire has an impressive setup. And I think, about 150, 200 fans at their games?
Yeah, I mean, they'll on a good game, they'll draw in 250. The Spinners were a funny one, because every time I'd see who they'd signed, I'd be texting Greg going, "How have you managed that?" Because he basically made up a squad of kind of, I say ex-BBL players, but there were guys that are still more than capable of playing in a BBL. The sort of the Nathan Charles and the Barry Websters and those guys. And then he was bringing in guys that were sort of phenomenal National League players like Josh Horton and Connor Porter, who's again played in the BBL. So yeah, they're kind of far enough out of the city centre to be able to build their own little fan base without competing with, say, the Magic or even the Giants. So geographically for you, what is the local rivalry scene like? I mean, what's your sort of nearest competitor, and are you kind of up against anything with sort of being nearish the Eagles?
Yeah, in terms of rivals, obviously our closest rival is the Tees Valley Mohawks, and I'm not sure whether they intend to enter the National League system next year or not. If they do, it's competition like anything else. We don't. I think it adds a little bit of extra spice when we have the local derby games. So the Tees Valley game was another game I actually missed. I was supposed to be coaching that game, and I was ill. It was just before the coronavirus. I'm not sure whether it was coronavirus or something else, but either way, I pulled through. But I missed that game. But it was a game where we had about another 500 in the attendance, and it was a good game. It was a nice, spicy affair. So I'm all for those local derbies. In terms of development, I suppose we try to ring fence what we do. So you'll be well aware of the politics and the jealousy and the bitterness in basketball, which is prevalent in any sport, really. I don't like it. Even for my players, I don't like trash talking. And I just think that if you're good enough, let your game do the talking. You don't need to do you don't need that element. And off the court, we don't like to get involved in the bitchiness, the jealousy, the backstabbing, promising something, not delivering it. We like to think that we have the right morals as a club. I'll give you one example. There was a Portuguese player. I think as a club, because we have a good website, and we have, if you do some research on Teesside Lions, a lot of information will come up. Lots of photos will come up. So we have quite a large presence off the court. We become quite an attractive club to players. So, in 2012, I think it was, when there was the big kind of head-to-head between ourselves and the Rossendale Raptors, players were coming to us out of the woodwork. I mean, we managed to sign Pabz Sam, and he came from Italy, played in the Swiss league, played in the Italian league, wanted to come over here and learn English and play over here. And he turned Worcester Wolves down to play for us. And it was more a statement of his personality and his character, as opposed to anything we were offering, because we were offering very little at the time. But we had engaged with him and replied to him and opened up the door for him. I think he played 2 or 3 pre-season friendly games for us and was clearly an elite level player, a BBL player. And Worcester contacted him at the time and said, we'd like you to come down and play for us. And he said that, I'm going to stick with James. James was the one that messaged me back. No one else did at the time. So I think it was a good statement of his character to show that kind of commitment to our cause. And we had another player that contacted us. I can't remember what it was, but he contacted us, and we were talking to him for 2 years. And he was a Portuguese player. And with the economic downturn, the Portuguese players, a lot of them weren't getting paid. There was troubles with clubs over there. So he was wanting a fresh start somewhere else. And he wanted to come to us, and I said to him, look, at the moment we just don't have a player budget. So we can help you relocate, we can help your family, we can help you get jobs, but effectively we won't be paying you a salary to come over here as a fully professional player in Division 4 basketball. And he kind of took that on board, and we still maintained contact and dialogue for 2 years. And in the end, he came over and played for us. But I just think as a club, we're the kind of club that I would rather under promise and over deliver than the other way around. And I think when you talk to anybody that has played professional basketball, the amount of stories that you have from different clubs where they've been promised gold and delivered sand, I don't want us to be remembered in that same conversation. So the amount of effort we put into relocating this player and his family, and then we had the local rivals that were just constantly in their ear, to the point that one day they decided to leave and go there. And I think they played one game and then stopped playing there. So it's that was the main reason I stopped the National League team previously. Was just it wasn't worth the effort. So this time I think we're a bigger club. and we have a bigger support base. We have the facility. We have everything. All the ingredients are there. That means we can kind of stand on our own feet, and we're the attractive option. We're not the I don't think that the competition to go somewhere else now is as strong in this local area. We've possibly jumped ahead of the rivals, but in terms of having competition and rivals in this area, I don't see a problem, and I don't see a problem with there's 700,000 people living in the Teesside area, in the wider Teesside area, so there's more than enough people for two clubs to flourish, as long as those clubs do their jobs respectfully and individually. I think there's more than enough potential for those clubs to develop. We've laid a really good foundation of junior development. We have a lot of players coming through the clubs of all standards, abilities, National League, elite, and recreational players. So there's lots of opportunities there. And I think if every club does that, if you develop your club in the right way, you're on the right pathway to a successful entity. So competition, I don't think, is very important. In terms of competition, I don't think is going to be a problem. In terms of new competition coming through in the Northeast, you have obviously Newcastle Eagles development side as well. So in our division, there will be the under-23s Newcastle team. You also have Sunderland, and I believe Durham Wildcats will be re-entering the National League structure under Ian Hewitt. So they're going to be a good programme. And if Mohawks do enter as well, you've got, 2, 4, maybe 4, 5, 6 teams that could be in the Northeast. And if each team is in its area developing in the right way, it just means that more people are getting involved. I've never really sided with the argument that shouldn't you combine all 5 teams and have one really good team? No. Have more teams and grow the sport organically, which means that there's more people, there's more players, there's more teams, and it's a much better situation. Absolutely.
Josh, my man.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting what you're saying. It sounds like you guys are a very honest and very modest club. You sound like you want to stick to your principles, and I highly respect that a lot. I think it's very difficult in the market of professional basketball in the United Kingdom, because sometimes I know for a fact, having my father been a part of professional organizations, that the promises come from above, and then the unfortunate mess you have is it has to be sort of communicated either through a GM or a coach, and that's where the bad taste comes. You guys have got a brand. My question for you guys is, what other methods can you help to sort of even build it even further? I mean, you're in a place such as Teesside that has a really rich sporting history with a very good football franchise and the fan base there. Have you thought about approaching Middlesbrough and sort of maybe building some sort of, some foundation with them, with, I don't know, youth coaching or summer camps that could, in the long term, bring you a bigger fan base possibly?
I follow Middlesbrough, so I'm a fan of Middlesbrough Football Club.
I apologise.
I'm not. Well, I'm unfaithful, so I just enjoy football in general.
Yeah.
But I'd like to see Middlesbrough's the local team. I'd like to see them do well. It doesn't always happen, but there is, when you see. When Middlesbrough had the success they had under Juninho and Ravanelli, and there was a huge buzz around the area, and Middlesbrough and Teesside, they do have a lot of deprived areas, and there are a lot of people that maybe fall under the line in terms of financial income. So we're very aware that we have to price a product that is attractive but also financially viable to the area that we live in. Last year our tickets were I think it was £6 for adults and £4 for under 18s. A lot of clubs make the mistake of selling too cheap, and then what you have is a question as to the credibility of the product. If it's too cheap, it must be rubbish. So you actually turn people away. So you have to get the right balance. I mean, it's hard to sell a £6 ticket if you're playing in a sports hall and you're sat on a chair. So you're not getting that value of entertainment or the product. Thankfully, we have the ingredients to put on a pretty good show. But we haven't. We've made good allies with the Middlesbrough Mayor, Andy Preston. He's been a supporter of what we're trying to do. And we have the Tees Valley Mayor has just sent out a lovely message on social media to kind of welcome Marc Steutel to the area and to praise the work we're doing on and off the court. We're trying to be really positive, really. There's the Tees Valley Combined Authority, which is the kind of collective council for this area. They have a project which is looking to change the perspective of Teesside and Tees Valley as a destination. When you say Teesside, maybe many people would turn up their nose, or they would think that it is, you know, it's just industry. And really, that's changed a lot in the last 20 years. So I think we can help as a basketball club, and hopefully positive sporting role models that can go not only into the area, but also outside of the area and spread the message that Teesside is a nice place to be, and there's lots of positives around. But the buzz that can be generated for a community on the back of sport and success is incredible. And Middlesbrough, when they had that period of success and they won the Carling, I think it was in 2003, it was fantastic. The whole town, the whole area just lifted. And I think that's what we want to do ourselves. We want to add to that potential for the area to be positive about something. So would we go and seek, I mean, we're open to partnerships with other clubs. I don't think we need it. It's not something we've identified as in we need that to be successful. If we keep on doing what we're doing, I would hope that if we can generate 500 fans now within half a year of basketball, if we keep on going, we could quickly turn that into 1,200. I mean, we have solid, we're not running this as a sport, and we're not running this as a passion. We're running this as a business. And I don't mean that in the sense that we're trying to make money from this. But every aspect, even from the junior development program, it has to be sustainable. So we're not looking, myself and Martin are not looking to bankroll a BBL season and then decide we don't want to do it. What we're looking to do is to build and grow the product, which is the club, the brand, and the services we provide, to increase the finances so that if any one aspect of the club was to disappear, the club itself does not. So if something happens to me, if something happens to Martin, the club can still operate under a sound financial footing. And that will go through the junior development program, which is very successful and generates a lot of income for us. It will go through sponsorship, it will go through ticket sales, and it will go through merchandise sales, and other areas that we identify that we can generate secondary income, such as the cafe, bar, and other areas.
Yeah, you can sell a Palmer at a game, can't you?
Well, do you know what? At the moment, our best-selling thing, we have hot dogs, nachos, and burgers, and the burgers are incredible. I mean,
Palmer's. I thought Middlesbrough was famous for Palmer.
Parmo, yeah. Well, do you know what? I mean, Parmo was the chicken Parmo. Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think it is. It's a Teesside delicacy. I think there will be a time where we have to put on a Parmo.
You can't go to Middlesbrough without a Palmer. That's for sure.
Yeah.
We'll start to wrap things up first. Ad, you got any more questions?
Really interesting listening to you, James. It's I'm a huge fan. In fact, we're all huge fans of the National League as a whole, and I just think it's slowly but surely. I just think it's really catching up, if that makes sense, in terms of the quality of teams and play, and what certainly what Worthing did last year, and teams like Solent, they've just got it going on down in the National League. So I wish you all the best with it, because I know what I get where you're going with it from watching the way the Spinners have developed their team and their programme, and certainly what Greg's done's been amazing, and Guy, Andrea and Mike have got a really good thing going. So I just identify with kind of where you're going at this point, and I think having Marc there is just going to be amazing for you.
Thank you.
Quite what's the word? It's a real coup getting him there.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, I think that was when we knew when we were going to sign Marc, it wasn't just what he would bring on the court. It would also be the power of his signing off the court. And I think that the project, he was sold on the project. There is substance behind it. I don't want to sound either too arrogant or too... one of our pitfalls last season was because of the level of brand we had. For a lot of teams that came to play us, we were almost the cup final. Say, all right, these guys think they're the big boys. Let's knock them down a peg or two. So every game that we had was a lot harder than it would normally be. I mean, we'd play some games and thinking, what is going on here? And I think there was just that added incentive for other teams playing us to kind of up their game. And when people came to the facility we were at, it's a credible arena. It's 1,200 seats. It's the NBA portable baskets. It's a credible arena. So people have, when you come there, you're thinking, this is my cup final. I'm going to make this happen. So we that was a pitfall, and I think with the addition of Marc, it's going to be an additional pitfall next year, in the sense that we are going to be the team under the spotlight. The teams will have to up their game, and we will have to be aware of that. That now is a problem for Marc to deal with, and not necessarily myself. But yeah, no, I appreciate your comments. I agree with the National League. I think over the last, sometimes it's hard to see the kind of curve of development in basketball. The BBL in the 90s was incredible. And then we had this period, and I think probably the ITV digital deal that the BBL had signed behind the backs of Sky, it probably had an effect on Sky. Sky was then, don't come back to us, we won't be working with you again. And then ITV digital collapses. So, the BBL in terms of TV production has been in the abyss for quite a long time. But you can only, when you look at the access that people had to the sport in the 80s and the 90s, and the numbers of people that grew in terms of either watching the game or participating in the game, there was an obvious link between, TV coverage and access to the sport.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I feel that now the National League, when you're looking at the players that are kind of, 20 years in development, that you're looking at 20, 30, even 35-year-old players that are high level because of the experiences they've had through the 90s, maybe it's the early 2000s, because basketball was becoming a little bit more professional and social media started kicking in. I think we're now seeing the fruits of that labour, where there's lots of players around, there's more teams around. I think in 2012, there was only 2 teams in the Northeast, and now you're looking at 2 or 3 teams Northeast, and now you're looking at maybe 5 or 6 teams in the Northeast. So there is progression and development, and it is pleasing to see, and I think it'll get bigger and better as well.
Absolutely. Josh, my man, in closing?
No, honestly, it's been a lot of pleasure, and I think, I hope the best for you guys. It sounds like you guys are on the right track. And when the season gets starting, I'll be up to Teesside to watch a couple of games. Excellent.
Let us know, please. We'll welcome you with open arms.
Can't wait.
Good stuff. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show, Mr. James Thomson.
Thank you very much.
We'll be back again. Cheers, Ads. Cheers, Josh. So Ads has got a bit of hay fever going on there.
Hay fever, man. I don't know how you guys are, but it's killing me up here.
Right, we will be back, so watch this space.